Hello and welcome to Lansing Pulse. I'm Ken Miller, joined by City Administrator Tim Vandall. Tim, we're closing in on the end of 2021. We're recording this in mid-December. And I think a few, if any, people could have predicted how this year would go. It was weird to start, and it's kind of weird to finish, too. Let's start with commercial development in Lansing, though, which had the added hurdle of the pandemic to contend with, but maybe that wasn't as bad as we thought it was going to be.
You know, in some circumstances, it didn't hurt us as much as other communities, perhaps. You look at some of the commercial growth we had in 2021, Mutual Savings built a brand new building right along K7. It's a beautiful, modern-looking building, adds 4 or 5 jobs to the Lansing area, and it's just a benefit to that K7 corridor. So, I mean, that's some new commercial growth we had. A couple of projects that maybe were impacted a little bit by supply chain issues and pandemic-related issues. So Family Eye Care, they're still planning on building their building, but I think because of maybe some supply chain issues and increases in costs, maybe the building's going to be a little bit smaller than they originally envisioned. But still, it's my understanding they're still planning on building that building next year, and the sketches I've seen of the building, it looks terrific. So that's still on the docket for early next year, and I think that's going to be great. The final one, where again it's commercial development, but it has been impacted by the pandemic a little bit, Harbor Freight. We were originally told, I think way back when, that maybe they'll be open by Thanksgiving, and then that got pushed back a little bit to maybe it'll be open before Christmas, maybe it'll be open after Christmas, and now it's looking like perhaps late January. And it's a lot of supply chain issues with the delays there, and so it's still a new building. It's going to be a business that's generating sales tax. It's going to be a few more jobs. But if they're having trouble getting their inventory to sell, it doesn't make a lot of sense for them to open their doors. So that's been delayed a couple of months by supply chain related issues. But you're right, overall, 2021 was a banner year for the city of Lansing. The pandemic did impact things a little bit, but overall it's been very positive.
Right, and we didn't even go into, I know Quick Trip opened in 2020, but they've done some remodeling already because the business has been so good. We didn't even go into Eisenhower and the medical additions down. So, I mean, there's other things that have been happening that, again, I think at the March of 2020, it would have been hard to predict that it's gone as well as it had in terms of the commercial development. Okay.
I just want to jump in and piggyback on something you had mentioned. A lot of those businesses too, maybe people don't think about some of those medical related businesses, but at the same time, places like that, those are adding 4, 5, 6, 7 jobs to Lansing. Those people are pumping gas in Lansing. They're running errands in Lansing. They're eating in Lansing restaurants. So even though maybe those smaller businesses don't seem as sexy to people on the outside, that's adding people to Lansing, and that's increasing our daytime population. So those things are incredibly important, and I'm glad you brought those up.
Okay. All right. In terms of residential development, it's a somewhat less rosy picture. Talk a little bit about the situation there was, and more importantly, and I think more importantly for Lansing, what we may see moving forward in 22.
Yeah, well, the first thing I'll say about that is, when lots in Lansing are available, when there is a residential lot with water, sewer, and road access, they sell. People build on them. People want to live in Lansing. Where it gets challenging is there's just not a lot of lots remaining in Lansing. And residential development for whole subdivisions, it's incredibly expensive. And one of the things that we always try to remind people is, if you're building a subdivision, the Miller subdivision, you've got to build sewer lines, you've got to install water lines, you've got to build roads, you've got to build telephone and internet lines. You've got to do all of these things before you've even built one house. And then on top of that, say you're in the middle of installing sewer lines or building roads, and the housing market collapses after you've already invested millions of dollars in your infrastructure costs. So there's all of these things that make residential development incredibly challenging, and it's not an open and shut case. So you're right, it has been less rosy than the commercial development. We've only had maybe a couple of new duplexes and a couple of new houses this year. So, but I will tell you, I know the council is kicking around some ideas and options on what we can do to help spur more residential growth. If there's things that we can do to make those development costs more reasonable, we're going to look at doing that. And I know the council's going to be kicking around some ideas maybe in early 2022 on what we can do to address that issue. But you're right, it's been a challenge, but hopefully we're on the right path, and hopefully if we have this discussion in December of 2022,
Sure, right.
hopefully the outlook will be a bit more rosy.
Right. All right, so some other major challenges that Lansing's facing, and this is probably more internal than external, but I think it affects the city as a whole. But it's no secret we've had some staff retention and hiring issues. When I say that, I predominantly start off with the police department. And again, I think that's the most well-known. Talk a little bit, you're the city administrator, you're the top guy, you're seeing it firsthand. What have you seen, and maybe, again, more importantly, how are we moving forward?
It's been incredibly challenging over the last couple of years to hire and retain good police officers. And I tell you what, even in the last 6 to 9 months, when you see nationwide, not only public safety employees, but everywhere,
Right.
people are leaving their jobs because they can make more money.
Right.
So that's kind of amplified the problem a little bit. But one of the things that I want to say, one of the things that I really respect about Mayor McNeil and the rest of our council, when they see a problem, they try to address it head on. And they knew this was an issue. So the council and Mayor McNeil early this year got the ball rolling on a public safety pay study to try to increase the wages of our police officers who put their lives on the line every day. So that was something that's going to be implemented in January of 2022. So those guys, most of them will get a little bit of a bump in their pay. But beyond that too, like we were saying, retention has kind of mushroomed even beyond public safety the last 6 to 9 months. So it's possible we might be seeing a pay study for all of our other employees in 2022 or 2023 perhaps. But that's one of those things, you're right. It seems like it's a nationwide issue with retaining good employees because it seems like everywhere is hiring right now. And I understand that mindset of, if I can go somewhere else and make a little bit more money, some people, do that,
Right,
and
right.
More power to them. But it's one of those things where we are trying to address that issue, and I've been really proud of how the council's tried to address that. We're trying to do right by our staff, and hopefully it's a step in the right direction.
Right. Okay. All right. In January, we will see a new member of the Lansing City Council. What can you tell us about Dan Clemens?
Mr. Clemens was elected to serve the residents of Ward 4 in Lansing, and I believe he's retired from the military, but I think he's still working right now. So we've gone through a lot of our departmental trainings with Mr. Clemens, and they've all been very positive. We've had a lot of really good, thoughtful discussions with department heads, and he's had some really good questions. One of the things that I will tell you too, he is incredibly detail-oriented, very sharp eye, and there was a briefing that I think I gave him at one point, and he picked out a couple of typos in it. So I mean, he's very detail-oriented, very sharp man, and I think he's going to be a great fit on our city council.
It's kind of interesting, and you and I have kind of talked about this a little bit. I've been here 16 years, you're coming up on 7 years, I think. There's not been a lot of change on our city council. It really hasn't turned out to be where you've had to get to know new people constantly every 2 to 4 years. I guess that's probably a pretty good thing, wouldn't you say?
From my perspective, it's pretty nice because it's nice when your bosses are consistent and you know their priorities, and elaborating on that a little bit. I know I have some council members who prefer to communicate by text message, some who like to pop in my office, some who like to give me a call, and just all of these little things that some council members are passionate about, whereas other council members aren't. If you have a consistent council, you get to know them, and it's the same thing with any line of work. No one wants their boss to change every 9 months because then there's
Right.
different expectations
Right,
and different
exactly.
rules and stuff. So in some ways, it's been very nice to have a consistent city council. But I'm also really excited about Mr. Clemens coming on board. I think he's going to do a fantastic job.
All right, let's wrap it up, and we've kind of hit on this a little bit earlier, but 2022 is upon us in a couple of weeks here. We've already started, whether it's with the Kansas legislature, the federal government, you and I have visited with some of our representative staffs. Let's maybe start there. In 2022, what's kind of the game plan here in terms of Lansing? The federal government has provided a lot of money, whether it was COVID related. Infrastructure is coming up now too. I guess talk about that. To me, and I haven't said this before in the 16 years I've been here, but 2022, to me in my gut, feels like it's going to be a pivotal year. When you talk about potential funding sources, when you talk about potential projects that could be on the board, it could be a year of change.
You're exactly right, and infrastructure is on everybody's mind recently. And one of the things that I think you and I have spoken about, I know the mayor's aware of too, trying to lay the groundwork for large-scale infrastructure projects that improve Lansing's access to the rest of the metro. It's incredibly challenging. As the crow flies, we are so close to the rest of the metro, but it takes us so much longer to get places because of our location, and we don't have an interstate that close to Lansing. One of the things, though, that I'll try to temper this enthusiasm a little bit, these large-scale projects, they don't happen in 1 year.
Right.
You have to lay that groundwork. You have to talk to those congressional staffers, or you have to talk to KDOT. You have to get the ball rolling in those ways.
Right.
So one of the things that I think people will see in 2022 are those discussions continuing to happen. And I know one of the things that I briefed the mayor on, and you and I were involved in, was talking to Congressman LaTurner's office to try to encourage them to think about access for Lansing. What can we do to improve access for the 12,000 residents of Lansing? And beyond that too, not only improving access, making it faster to get to the rest of the metro, but K5, one of our main thoroughfares in Lansing, that's an incredibly dangerous road.
Right.
And you and I went there and we spoke about that with Congressman LaTurner's office. We've had those discussions with KDOT as well. So again, I think it's at that stage now where those people behind the scenes have to kind of get out their calculators and figure out, are there funds to make improvements to K5? What do those improvements look like?
Right.
So that's a really big thing that we expect to see in 2022. On the more local level, though, we're going to be seeing some improvements to K7 and Eisenhower. That's a project that we're really proud of.
Right.
Our Public Works Director got a $1.5 million grant from KDOT to help construct that intersection. And not only that, we're working hand in hand with our friends in Leavenworth on that project. We always hear from people, why can't governments work together? Why can't they do things that are more efficient? We're working hand in hand with Leavenworth. They're chipping in funds, we're chipping in funds, and KDOT is chipping in funds. So that's a project that I'm really excited about. It's going to make that K7 Eisenhower intersection safer. It's going to improve the flow of traffic. Another thing that I think people are going to see, we've got some improvements planned for Bernard Park that'll hopefully take place in 2022. And right now, we're anticipating that to be maybe a $5 million project. But because of that sales tax that our voters approved 3 or 4 years ago, we can fund those improvements without any property tax increases. Now, I say that, and I say that based on a $5 million estimate. If we open up those bids in February or March, who knows if the project gets delayed or what. But I will tell you, those designs for Bernard Park, they're at the 95% stage. We've got a pretty solid estimate around $5 million, and we're excited about it. So like I said, as long as it comes in fairly close to our estimate, we should be able to do that without any property tax increases. So that's a long-winded way of saying 2022 is going to be an incredibly busy year in Lansing. We feel good about it, though. There's a lot of things that we're excited about. I feel like the mayor and the city council have really set a firm foundation for us, and I feel like we've got a good path going forward in 2022.
Okay, I've been speaking with City Administrator Tim Vandall for Lansing Pulse. I'm Ken Miller.